Hi everyone, this is Learn Music with Chris. I'm Chris, and in this video we are looking over the musical knowledge for Old German Dance by Michael Pretorius, which is the first piece in Trinity's initial grade for piano from the 2021 to 2023 syllabus. First of all, we'll look over what musical knowledge that we need to know for any piece in the initial grade. We need to know the pitch names of each note. Now that is what letter that note is. So is it a C, is it a G, is it a D, that sort of thing. We need to know note durations. That's how many beats each note is worth. It is worth knowing that we don't need to know note values of notes. So that's if it's a crotchet or a minim until grade 1. However, you're probably still learning that information, so it's best to try and remember it for initial grade as well, and then it's one less thing to worry about when you get to grade 1. Clefs, staves, or bar lines. So that's knowing that the right hand plays in the treble clef, the left hand plays in the bass clef, that we know what bar lines are, and then we can identify staves or staffs as well. Identify key and time signatures. Now it's important to remember this is just to be able to name them. You don't need to be able to explain them until grade 1. Again, you might be learning some of that stuff, so if you know it, that's all great. But for initial grade, you just need to be able to say, that's called the time signature, and that's called the key signature. And then we just need to explain basic terms. Now, initial grade, there's not going to be anything too complex, but you're certainly going to want to be able to know your dynamics, what slurs are, what staccato is, and stuff like that. So we'll take each line separately and go over the musical knowledge. Some things like time signatures and bar lines and stuff like that we'll only really need to go over when we're going over the first line, because then it's just the same thing. I also won't go over the pitch name of every single note, as that's just going to take too long. If you're still unsure about notes that are in the treble clef and bass clef, then I'll leave links to my videos on them in the description below. So for the first line, we start off with our first finger of our right hand on middle C, and then our fifth finger of our left hand on the C below middle C. We are playing a mixture of crotchets, which are worth 1 beat each, and minims, which are worth 2 beats each. The left hand is only playing minims for this first line, and the right hand is playing crotchets for the first 3 bars, and then plays minims in the 4th bar. As I said earlier, right hand is playing in treble clef, and the left hand is playing in the bass clef. Each line has 4 bars, which are divided by bar lines. We also have staves. Now that is the lines and spaces that the notes sit on. Each one of these is called a stave or staff, but on piano we technically call them a grand staff or a great stave when you have the two of them together for your right hand and your left hand. The 4/4 at the start of the line is what we call the time signature, and the space before or between the time signature and the clef is what we call the key signature. Now that will be a wee bit more noticeable when there are sharps or flats in it, and there are a couple of tunes in initial grade where that will be the case. And finally, our only dynamic in the first line is MF, which means mezzo forte, which then translates to moderately loud. Moving on to the second line, and you'll notice that it's almost identical to the first line. In fact, the only difference between the two lines is in the dynamics, where now in the second line we now have to get a bit quieter and play P, which means piano, which translates to soft or quiet. That quickly brings us onto our third line, where things get a little bit more complicated, because along with our 1-beat crotchets and our 2-beat minims, this line also brings in quavers, which are worth half a beat each. We also go back to the original dynamic of MF, or mezzo forte, for this third line. And then finally on to the fourth line, which you'll also notice is then almost identical to the third line. Again, the only difference is in the dynamics, where in the first bar of the line, bar 13, we now go up to F, which means 40, which translates to loud. Now this will be the loudest that you play in this entire tune. Then when we get into bar 14, we have to drop way back down to piano. And then for the last 2 bars, we're back up to the loudest at 40. As I've pointed out a couple of times, there's actually quite a lot of repetition in this piece. The first and second lines are almost identical to one another, and the third and fourth lines are almost identical to one another. It's good practice to try and notice this sort of thing when you first start looking at a brand new piece, as it will make the learning process a little bit easier. And that's a look at Old German Dance from Trinity's initial grade for piano. Check out my other videos for playthroughs on other grade tunes. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, and if you want to keep up to date with all my videos, then please consider subscribing to my channel. And with that, I'll see you in the next video, and until then, keep practicing.